Hello, today I want to talk about how manifestation works for me because sometimes, honestly, it doesn't work. Even though I have read about manifestation for years, I admit that it is not always easy. Manifesting your soulmate, manifesting a new job. Yes, these ideas are wonderful, but when I can't manifest, I feel really terrible. How do you feel when your manifestation doesn't work? I think this takes a lot of resilience because most of us, when we try something once and it doesn't work, we give up. We assume it's not for us. We move on, but real growth usually asks us to stay a little longer than what feels comfortable. I'm going to talk about how we can move through this process while staying in the flow. And the first thing is self-love. That's why what really stands out to me is how practical this all become over time, especially when it comes to self-love. When a lot of people hear the word self-love, it feels like a narcissism. It can feel distant, abstract, and if I will be honest, kindness to yourself isn't usually where my mind naturally go first. Before kindness, most of us default to criticism. You complain and you compare. Those thoughts feel automatic. They show up without effort. So the idea that self-love could be beginning rather than outcome feels unnecessary. But the key realization here is this. Self-love is not something you do for other people. That's just a side effect. Self-love is something you do for yourself. So everything begins with self. It changes how you function internally. It changes how you show up in the world. And there is actually a lot of science now showing that kindness puts your body into a healthier state. It helps regulate your nervous system. It improves heart coherence, which is closely linked to overall health. That's why the practice starts with self-love. You begin with a circle of love. You don't jump straight to loving the whole world. You start small with yourself, then your family, then your neighborhood, then your friends, country, and world. But everything starts with you. And finally, you extend that love globally. And here's why that matters. Self-love is like a muscle. You can train it. And when you train it constantly, you don't just act more loving. You actually become more love. You feel it. You just have love. When you live from self-love, something shifts. You start seeing the humanity around you, even when it's messy, even when people disappoint you, even when someone does something that feels wrong to you. Instead of immediately judging, you just begin to look at the people, your friends, your family with empathy, understanding. And that's understanding reframes how you see the world. This isn't about doing love so you become a better person or nicer person on the surface. It's about experiencing the world as a more connected, alive, and meaningful. So now you're experiencing changing. Your life becomes more peaceful. The interesting thing is that self-love doesn't just change you, it changes how people respond to you. I was in a relationship where he didn't care about me. I didn't feel safe and I felt terrible in my life. I felt so unlovable. In those moments, life felt very hard, very narrow, like there was no space to breathe. Everything felt heavy and I carried that weight every day. But when I finally let him go, something changed. I felt relaxed. Even though I was single, the silence felt kinder than the relationship. I felt lighter, calmer, and more connected to myself. For the first time in a long while, I felt better. That's why self-love is such powerful, underestimated force. You see, this is so powerful. For a long time, society taught us that kindness was weakness. The practice here does something deeper. It actually trains your brain to recognize how connected you are to other people. And when that connection becomes real, something interesting happens. You don't have to try to be nicer. You just are. Your character shifts, your consciousness changes. This isn't about personal branding or performance. It's about inner transformation. Your feeling is changes. One of the most life-changing things is realizing that you no longer chase people who cannot give you enough love because you already have enough love within yourself. When you truly value yourself, you stop accepting half-hearted attention and emotional neglect. You become more selective, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. Your standard rise naturally. You choose peace over chaos and clarity over confusion. Love stops feeling like something you must beg for and starts feeling like something you share. In that space, relationships become healthier and even being alone feels safe, full, and deeply meaningful. By the way, if you like this video, please hit the like button. Another key piece is how this work creates positive emotions. And positive emotions don't mean pretending everything is fine. They don't mean forcing happiness or suppressing sadness. Being positive doesn't mean ignoring pain or pretending everything is fine. It means having the courage to stay present with what hurts without letting it define you. Pain is not the enemy. It carries information. It points to what matters, what needs healing, and what needs to change. When you allow yourself to feel pain without self-judgment, it stops overwhelming you. You can feel negativity, your emotions can be here, your emotions can be here. Positivity then becomes the ability to hold sadness with awareness, not to drown in it, but to learn from it. It is not about denial, it's about understanding, acceptance, and growth. Your inner environment can shape in your life. It is striking how many of our thoughts are not truly our own. We inherit them from our parents, from the emotional climate we grow up in, from what was modeled rather than spoken. The way we respond to stress, love, failure, or silence is often learned long before we are aware of it. That's why our relationship with depression and solitude is so revealing. Not as something negative or joyful, but as something quietly informative. In those moments, we begin to notice which thoughts belong to us and which ones were simply passed down. Choosing solitude doesn't mean you are lonely. Sometimes it is where clarity lives. Sometimes it's where joy lives. What surprised me most was hearing about the experiences with depression. And this is important to say clearly. Practicing manifestation doesn't mean you never feel sad again. Everyone goes through hard moments. Everyone feels lost. Everyone misses people. The difference is what you do with that sadness. Instead of letting it turn into guilt or self-attack, you can channel into love, compassion, and vulnerability. You can feel depression, you can feel happiness, but just you can let it deepen connection rather than shut it down. And that's where the real power of this work lives. Not in avoiding pain, but in transforming how you relate to it. And the shame. One of the most important questions that comes up here is this: how do you stop sadness from turning into shame? Because sadness is natural, shame is crushing, and so many people confuse the two. Sadness says, this hurts. Shame says, I'm wrong for feeling this. I made the wrong decision. I shouldn't be here. That's the moment when pain stops being an experience and starts becoming an identity. Instead of allowing the feeling to pass, we turn into against ourselves. We judge ourselves for being human, and that's where real damage happens. These are the kind of thoughts people carry silently every day, and I carry also. When I was at school, I didn't feel enough, and my teacher and my family put a lot of pressure on me. That experience stayed with me for a long time. I started to believe that I wasn't good enough, and this feeling followed me into my adult life. Instead of seeing the pressure as something external, I blamed myself. I felt ashamed of making mistakes and afraid of failing. Over time, this shame became part of how I saw myself. Even after school ended, those feelings didn't disappear, and they continued to affect my confidence and self-worth. And even though shame used to shape your decisions, something shifted. You begin to realize that connection isn't measured by perfection or constant presence. It's shaped by your awareness, repair, and emotional availability. Yes, there were things I did wrong. There were moments I would choose differently now, but instead of turning those moments into shame, I allowed them to become lessons. Guilt and shame keep us frozen in self-judgment, replaying the past without growth. Learning does the opposite. It creates movement. How do you handle your shame? Please write in the comments. One of the most helpful ways to understand purpose and manifestation is to stop thinking of life as a single destination and start thinking of it as a journey on a highway. You are in highway and you have different paths. There is a direction your life naturally wants to move in. That's your highway. And what is interesting is that when you try to force yourself off that path, things often become unnecessarily difficult. You push harder, but everything feels heavy. But when you are aligned with that deeper direction, things move faster with less resistance because this is your way. Within that highway though, you still have choice. You can change lanes. You can speed up or slow down, okay? You can move here or you can move here. You can move left or right. That's your intention. And that there's a traffic. Sometimes it flows, sometimes it's stuck. That's the collective environment around you. The energy of the people, culture, and system you are part of Manifestation isn't just one thing, it is the combination of intention, destiny, and environment working together. That's why in this phase of the practice, intention is important, but so is flexibility. You focus on what you want and why you want it without trying to control every detail of how it will show up. This becomes especially important when we talk about relationships or life purpose. If you get too specific, you might block what's actually meant for you. You might think you know exactly what you want, only to realize later that those preferences came from conditioning, from society, from expectation, from stories you observed without questioning them. Manifestation isn't about surface, it's about essence, about how something feels, about the kind of connection or impact you want to experience. The same applies to purpose. And most of us change identities. We move through different circles of purpose. You might start as one thing, then evolve into something else, and then something else again. You can go this way and then again come back this time, and then something else again. That doesn't mean you are lost. It means you are growing. The challenge is that we tend to cling to early identities, job titles, roles, labels. They give us certainty, but they can also trap us. Letting yourself become something new takes courage. It means admitting you don't have all the answers. It means valuing how you think and how you learn over what you have already done. That's why tools like life questioning exercise can be so powerful. They force you to zoom out and look at your life across different dimensions, not just work or money, but emotional life, character, values, and quality of your life. When you do that, something shifts. You stop asking, what job do I want? And start asking, how do I want to live? How do you want your mornings to feel? Who do you want to spend time with? How much space do you want for growth, family, rest, and joy? When you get clear on the quality of life you want, work becomes a temporary experience rather than a definition. Choices that don't look impressive at the time but shape everything later. That brings us back to manifestation. A good manifestation isn't about whether it felt good or bad. It's not about understanding the experience. It's about asking at the end of the day whether certain qualities showed up in your life. Were you more loved? Did you feel gratitude? Did you learn something? Did you feel connected? When you measure manifestation that way, it stops being something you perform and starts being something you live. And that's when it stops being abstract and starts changing everything. Thank you for listening.